Thanks, Jesse. Good morning, everyone. My name is Annalise. I'm with Cal Forward, and I'll be your facilitator on this journey today. I'd like to call this meeting to order, but before we do that, I'd like to welcome you all. As always, feel free to provide introduction in the chat, Spanish and English as you can, and we'll have services to accommodate translation there from our team. We'll move to our second item, which is public comment, an opportunity for non-HRTC members to ask questions or give comments as desired. Do I hear any comments or see any hands raised?
Denison, not yet, but let's give it about 20, 30 seconds. Okay, seeing none, I think we can move on.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll move on to the next item, item number 3 on your agenda packet, which is comments from the HRTC. So this is your opportunity to give updates on programs or activities, specifically as they're related to the principles and values of SURF. So this is your chance to bring your work, events that you may want to draw to the group's attention to the group. Any updates, folks?
You can just give it 15 more minutes, or 15 more seconds, sorry. And then if not, I think we can move on. No announcements, no updates.
Everyone's ready for the weekend, Jesse. Just like
okay, that's all right. We'll take the extra time.
Well, thanks, folks. We'll keep it moving here and move on to really our first presentation for today. We want to give some concrete examples of consideration for HRTC projects. So as you know, we spend a lot of time talking about kind of abstract things as it relates to this, getting really important information as you all have diligently worked through research and thinking about prioritizing strategies to ultimately set the stage for which projects this group will prioritize for the state to consider for funding. So the challenge has been, as you all know, that the state is still finalizing the requirements for those types of projects they want to see. However, they've said on multiple occasions that really the best guide that they can give us right now is a program that has been now awarded, was released in the earlier part of this year. That's called the Economic Development Pilot, SFP. It was announced in May. There were 8 awards given, and as luck would have it, one of them is right here in Orange County. So we're fortunate that project in Santa Ana was selected out of really the entire state that was up for consideration. And we're going to hear today from 2 of those folks, specifically Ana with Corporación and Luis with Thrive Santa Ana, as they give us a little bit more background on the Walnut Daisy Farm project. And we hope this will be helpful to you all as we start thinking about strategies, help make the purpose of the work here a little more concrete, and really understanding not just this project, but what could be transferred and applied as we consider other projects and foundation for those projects. So with that, I think and hope that Ana and Luis are here with us. And if you are, please feel free to come off mute and start the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name's Luis Sarmiento, and I'm actually here with Nate. We're going to try to share computers here. Ana, unfortunately, will not be able to join today. She's attending services due to a death in her family. But Nate from Cooperación will be supporting with the presentation today on behalf of Cooperación. So good morning to everyone. I'll go ahead and get the presentation started. I think I introduced myself. My name's Luis Sarmiento. Pronouns are he or they, and I am the program director for our first community land trust here in the city of Santa Ana, Thrive Santa Ana. And we're going to be talking about our project, the Walnut and Daisy Urban Farm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nate. As Luis said, I've been with Corporación now for a little while, and I'm here on Ana's behalf, but also very familiar with the project. Personally, also been a member of Thrive for a while, and so be presenting here with Luis today. And so, to begin, the Walnut and Daisy Urban Farm will include space for 1, urban farming, 2, cooperative development and incubation, as well as space for farmers markets and community events. And all this will be developed, as you can see on the screen here. We've got architect's rendering of what the space will look like. All this will be developed via a community land trust model, which centers local ownership and governance. This rendering you see on the screen is from 2018. And some of the partners who we've been working with since then are listed on the bottom there. You see their logos. This specific rendering was done by City Fabric, which is a nonprofit architectural group. And they're based out of Long Beach and have done quite a few projects here in Santa Ana. So in the Walnut and Daisy neighborhood, 1 in 4 residents have experience in farming, whether here in the US or in their places of origin. And so just a little bit of a background about urban farming. Walnut and Daisy is going to have an aspect of it which incorporates urban farming, and that's a strategy for healthier, more sustainably, locally owned and produced food systems, drawing on deep knowledge in our communities. As mentioned, a lot of folks already have experience here in Santa Ana, and so this is going to be a really key project for a lot of folks who are living in that particular neighborhood, as well as Santa Ana as a whole. Since 2014, cooperative development has emerged as one strategy in partnership with different organizations in and around Santa Ana to combat the displacement of small businesses. For example, when the Carousel in downtown on 4th Street, which was a staple cultural attraction for many Latinos who grew up in Santa Ana, when it got shut down, and a lot of long-time Mexican-owned businesses were pushed out, being displaced by arbitrary rent increases and renovations. A study of downtown performed at that time in 2014 of downtown businesses was considered for the city council. And at that time, the city council passed a resolution known as the Wellness District Resolution, which named Mercadito and microfarm projects as potential economic development strategies in the city. And as you see here on the slide, community ownership is the second aspect that's going to be incorporated into the project, with incubation space for worker-owned businesses, also known as cooperatives, as an economic development strategy. And as mentioned already, the community land trust model for resident-led development. So I'll pass the mic back to Luis here, who will talk a little bit about some of the facets of the project that are relevant to the statewide or at least here to our folks in Orange County.
Thank you, Nate. And yeah, so like Jesse, had invited us early on to come share in this space with our, with y'all here in Orange County, to share, some of the aspects of our project, that are important to what we're trying to do here in Orange County, and some of the reasons why we think that we were selected as a pilot project under SERV. And we feel very, very fortunate to have been selected. And we'll talk a little bit about why we think that is. We believe it has a lot to do with our perspective on development and the way that our project has been able to really build on the participation of residents over many years. And so there's those of us that are leading the project now understand that really we're standing on and building on the work of residents for probably over a decade of community organizing that's been happening here in the city of Santa Ana. So in order to talk a little bit about that, for us, it is also important to recognize the context in which our development project happens, and also the context of development in our communities. Within SURF, we know that we're talking about centering disinvested communities. And what that means is recognizing from the perspective of our communities that development historically has been a process rooted in racism and rooted in the displacement of communities of color. In fact, a lot of the language of development comes from colonialism. If you do a little bit of research, you can find that, there's this idea of developed countries versus undeveloped countries or underdeveloped countries, which is something that comes out of a time where imperial powers were saying that, these poor countries need to be more like these wealthy countries, without recognizing, the history of colonialism and exploitation that model was built on. And here in our neighborhoods in the United States, we've seen that those types of perspectives perpetuated. Things like redlining, which were huge here in California, just like in other parts of the United States, were the models around which our cities were developed. And we still see, some of those practices developed today, perpetuated today, the way that for communities of color, it is systemically more difficult to access financing, more difficult to develop ownership in our communities of color. And what we're doing is actively, dismantling, actively countering those systems by creating something which is what we call community-led development. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we call community-led development and how we think that that's a better path. And this graphic was developed by a compañera who, may she rest in power, Miriam Lopez, was a young activist and leader in our movement. And she helped create this graphic a while back when we were trying to create, different communication strategies, pointing out some of the different health issues and different issues that have come about in our neighborhoods, and how our approach to development is looking for a better way. So again, community-driven development, the main aspect is centering the participation, the needs and the talents of local residents. And, some of our guiding values are, that we want to be able to address some of these root causes of inequality, while at the same time addressing some of the immediate needs that we see in our neighborhoods. The ongoing and direct participation of local residents. We use models of popular education, meaning we're trying to, move away from this very top-down approach to education, in which we have experts that have all of the information, and a public which is assumed to be completely disinformed. In popular education, we understand that everyone has a lot of information to share, and it's a horizontal learning process in which we learn from each other. And which leads me a little bit also to this idea of capacity building. A lot of the work that we do with Thrive is capacity building for residents to learn the language and, the technical aspects of development in order to be part of, be part of the conversations around development, but also building capacity among institutional partners who oftentimes don't really know how to work with community. And so there's also a lot of learning that has to happen and has happened with institutional partners, whether that's the city or other agencies, who are interested in connecting more with community, but need to also learn the skills to do that. And language justice, we've talked a very, very little bit about in this space. And it doesn't just mean having translation between English and Spanish, but really being intentional about language in our spaces and trying to make sure that the formats, the way that we're communicating is accessible and understandable for everyone as much as possible in any given moment. And I will say that in this space, there have been attempts, but we're still really not there. We don't have ongoing interpretation in our space, in this serve space, but we can talk about that another time. Real quickly, also just some of the ways, the methodologies that we implement these guiding values in our approach to development is through a lot of different tools, a lot of different ways that community can get involved in a project, starting from door-to-door, door knocking, surveys, inviting folks to participate via surveys. But we don't just stop there. We also host a lot of different sizes and types of community meetings. We've implemented community art projects. And we understand that you have to get creative. Different folks will participate in different ways. And we've had to implement, a lot of different methodologies in order to get folks in some of our neighborhoods to take ownership of the development process. And here in the serve space, we've talked a little bit about participatory action research, which is something along those lines. It's an approach to data and its approach to research that partners academic skills with community organizing and community building skills. So again, some of the elements that we think distinguish our project for selection was our approach to community engagement, putting workers first, environmental sustainability, which is also an aspect of our project. Our project and our partners that are part of our project have been recognized by the city of Santa Ana as a resource. And the fact that we were ready to go. Our project had already completed our city approvals, our permit processes. We had done, a lot of our due diligence, and we're basically ready to go on our construction. I'll try to go through this really quickly, and then I'll pass it back to Nate in a little bit to talk also a little bit about cooperatives and wrap up our presentation. But real briefly on community land trusts. So Thrive Santa Ana is a community land trust, which is a model, a type of nonprofit organization that permanently acquires land and administers that land as an asset for the community. CLTs very often build or manage affordable housing, but can also be used for things like open space, agriculture, commercial spaces, or community commercial spaces, and sometimes even just for the preservation of land. We have a really great example of a Native American land trust here in Orange County that is doing some preservation work on behalf of Native communities in the Bolsa Chica area, and in other parts of the United States, and here in California. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, but I feel like I'm going on, so I'll keep going. The history of CLTs is very much connected with social justice, and in particular, the first CLT here in the U.S. Came out of the civil rights movement, the first CLT is in the 1960s in Albany, Georgia, New Communities. It was a group of African-American farmers who saw the CLT model as a way to protect their ownership of land. And we know that there was systemically a way of taking land away from Black farmers. And part of that included denying federal loans and other strategies in which this land was being taken from Black farmers. So they organized the community land trust in order to protect their ownership of that land. Today, we have over 277 CLTs in the United States, 36 here in California, including in Oakland. I think there's now 5 CLTs in LA or in the LA area, in San Francisco, here in the city of Irvine. It's seen as a pretty successful model, which when we started looking at the administration of public land here in the city of Santa Ana, community groups started proposing the CLT model as a way to administer our publicly owned land in partnership with the community. This piece of land is the site of what is now under construction as the Walnut and Daisy micro farm. It was a piece of land which used to be the Orange County Rescue Mission many years ago, and was vacant for many years. And so we convinced the city of Santa Ana to allow us to do a community-driven development project on this site. Again, started doing door-to-door surveys. We did a bunch of community events over the course of several years, inviting residents to take ownership and provide guidance for this development project. And these slides are just a few pictures of what that looks like. Hosting different types of community meetings. We were able to visit the city of Pittsburgh at one point, which has a really strong movement also of community farming and community land trusts working to develop land as community-owned farms. But I think we're now in construction. Again, doing a lot of work with different partners to navigate the approval process. And we were able to break ground and are now in construction. We're projected to open up our space early next year. And we will be able to invite you all to the opening. I'm gonna pass it back to Nate, who will keep it going.
Sure. Thanks, Luis. So a little bit about Cooperación Santa Ana. We're a co-op developer, and what that means is we work with folks to provide training and resources and eventually incubation for folks to create their own cooperative business models. And our mission is here on the screen. Cooperación Santa Ana envisions a strong, locally owned shared community where products and services are created with dignity and respect for the people who work them and the planet that sustains us. And we'll move to the next slide. So what is a cooperative, you might ask? They're not new to Orange County and Southern California as a whole. In fact, the county's namesake of orange indicates the industry which utilizes, to this day still, the cooperative model en masse to ensure that citrus farmers could mitigate the boom and bust cycles of citrus farming and distribution. And so a cooperative here, as you see on the screen, is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. In other words, the economy and business projects are people-powered. And so worker co-ops, some popular retail stores you might not realize are co-ops include REI, where you can get outdoor gear and camping goods, as well as Ace Hardware. And so worker co-ops are owned and governed by the employees of the business. They operate in all sectors of the economy and provide workers with both employment and ownership opportunities. You'll see some other names listed at the bottom of this particular slide, such as the Cooperative Home Care Associates. This Equal Exchange logo here indicates a fairly traded co-op owned enterprise, as well as, for example, the Union Cab of Madison, Wisconsin, which is a worker owned cooperative. And so co-ops put workers first because the work tends to be longer term, offers skill training and better wages as compared to similar jobs in conventional companies. You can read the quote at the bottom from the New York Times here, but one of the biggest aspects is that it improves low wage work and it helps build wealth in communities most directly affected by inequality, which helps vulnerable workers build skills and earning potential, as well as household income and assets. One of the biggest important parts of any worker co-op is how the governance decisions are made. Whereas in traditional business models, the business owner or business owners, the small select group of individuals who own the business, make all the decisions and the employees are subject to the will of those who are making the decisions. In a co-op, workers are the business owners. So everybody has shared governance and a stake in how things are run inside the business. In other words, it puts workers first. And so with the Walnut and Daisy project, a portion of the space is going to be dedicated to co-op and small business incubation. There's going to be part of it's going to be a co-op farm known as Salsa and Crece, and La Milpa Cafe is going to finally have a physical location. They've been doing business for a while. Arte en Lana, El Mercadito Carusel, which has been around for a long time as well, is going to be able to utilize the space for the Mercadito, as well as there's going to be space for community events and office rental to bring in some revenue as well. And a little bit about that partnership with Crece Urban Farms. So we've got more than 50 families are supported by the by Crece's urban farm agriculture. 500 plus pounds of organic waste are diverted from landfills every month using a pretty robust composting system. And if you all get the chance to visit in Santa Ana, you'll see that it's grown really exponentially over the past 6 months alone. 0.4 acres of land so far, caring for 2 different beehives, as well as 35 trees that have been planted with Crece. And so this partnership is that Crece supports new and emerging Black, Indigenous, and people of color, also known as BIPOC urban farmers and food stewards, to create a just transition to a community-owned food system. And Crece is committed to building a local food system through democratic stewardship of land. And so part of that ensures that these life-giving workspaces can nourish our mind, bodies, and spirit. So I'll pass it back to Luis. I know that was a lot, but we're just about to finish here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think this is our last slide, but just ending again on what we believe was some of the reasons that our project was selected by the state, ending on this point that we were implementation ready. You know, all of our different community organizations, Thrive, Cooperación Santana, Crece, were named in the general plan that the city recently updated as community resources. We had at this point, you know, towards the end of last year, completed a lot of our pre-development, which is, I know, something that the state has is looking for, supporting community projects to navigate and to get through the pre-development process more efficiently and more quickly. Our project is a prevailing wages project. Our general contractor, All American Construction Solutions, is, you know, paying prevailing wages. Our disposition and development agreement with the city includes a 99-year lease. So we had, you know, site control. We have, you know, this is for all intents and purposes land that is in community hands, and we're able to, you know, develop it freely as, you know, as leaseholders. And yeah, the development budget is it's a little bit over $1 million. And fortunately, we'll be able to see a lot of that funding coming from the state to support construction costs. The full grant amount is 3.8 million. And that includes not just funding for construction, but actually funding to make an offer, a purchase offer on the land, so that that land can become part of the community land trust under, you know, direct ownership. And also, as you can imagine, a lot of costs, including operating support for the micro farm moving forward. Also, different types of technical assistance and technical support for the farmers themselves. Things like mini grants and other ways that we're using this funding to support the operation of these community-owned businesses. But thank you, everyone. Feel free to reach out to us if there are more questions. I know that this was kind of just a brief introduction. I think that there's definitely a lot more to share about our work and the ideas of community-driven development and what's also known as just transition, which is a perspective on development and where we're trying to go with development. But we'll stop there. And I don't know if there's questions. I haven't been able to look at the chat. Thank you, everyone, for the hearts and the claps and things.
A lot of support, a lot of love for this work, Luis. Nate, thank you for your time. We do have a few minutes for questions, so Jesse can help me field these, but maybe 2 or 3 questions. I know folks are curious as to how this came about, and again, congratulations. This is really incredible work. Let's see, Linda, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. This was just a brilliant background and homework that you did, and just a really excellent overview. It's an exciting project. A couple of questions that I have is, in the plan, is there a point at which you see this project becoming self-sustaining? Because it clearly, at this point, it's being largely, if I'm understanding correctly, largely state funded in its development. But at what point do you see it becoming self-sustaining?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. We have a pro forma that goes out about 5 years. And within that time is more or less what we're projecting for the community-owned businesses to be able to sustain the site itself. You can imagine, you know, operating costs include maintenance, utility payments, and part of our original, so even before we had any of this state funding, we were planning to take out a construction loan, because the cost of construction was one of the barriers for us. We were able to work with a national cooperative loan network called Seed Commons. And so they have been supporting us. We had a payment plan for this loan that went out about 5 years. And during that time, Thrive, as the land trust, you know, we're planning to continue supporting through grant funds, you know, some of the operating costs of the site over the next 5 years or so. You know, we're not going to go anywhere until we see that the businesses are able to maintain the site themselves. But I mentioned the loan because that phasing out was also tied with paying off that construction loan. And so once that construction loan is paid off, the businesses themselves really only have to worry about the maintenance and operating costs of the site, which is we feel is definitely feasible for some of these small micro businesses to get to that point. And we're able to kind of cost it out little by little, how those costs would be transitioned from the land trust to the businesses themselves.
Thanks, Luis. Linda, let me pause this there. I see a couple more hands. We'll come back to you. Annette, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Morning, great presentation. I just was curious as far as the numbers of jobs that you guys projected for this project as a part of the grant application.
Good question. I wish I knew those numbers off the top of my head. Sometimes it's hard for me as a project manager, project director role. I know that we have the jobs associated with on our side, we're building our staff. For example, my organization up until now has been one full-time person, me, and 2 part-time staff, and we're being able to finally move that to 3 full-time staff. The construction side, I don't recall the number of jobs associated, but it's not a huge project. I don't recall the amount of jobs associated with the construction side, but obviously those are also jobs that are being created.
Did you, I guess, and maybe you don't have this answer, just curious, like even just the long-term job creation that would come out of this project, what it is, what that number would have been.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about some of the economic. I guess what's coming to mind is we have 3 community-owned businesses that are going to be operating at the site. La Milpa Cafe consists, I want to say there's 4 women who own that cooperative. And Crece Urban Farms or Salsa Food, their co-op, I don't know how many members they have, but
About 6 or 7 right now.
yeah, it's like I was gonna say 7 or 8, but 6 or 7 members there. The last business is an artisan. He's from Oaxaca, and an older an artisan elder. His name is Gelacio Mendez. And yeah, so those are all folks that are gonna be business owners in our project. And then the mercadito is gonna take place. We're hoping at least 1 weekend a month, which is like a farmer's market. That's a group of 10 or so micro businesses, which with each are from 1 to 5 owners. So when you ask about jobs, I'm also thinking about our approach to this has also to do with creating business ownership opportunities.
Yeah.
But I wish I could definitely look a little bit more into what data we have on jobs that we're creating, because there's also definitely jobs associated with our project. I just don't have that numbers with me.
And I think overall economic impact, I think it would be probably an interesting or important piece of information, just overall economic impact, that how you communicate, like the community-led side, I think is very important. And then, but I'm sure in your application, I'm just curious on the other end of that, what did the state see from the economic impact that it would have, whether that was jobs or whether internally hiring, as well as the community, what jobs will be created over time and so forth, and maybe that economic output. So just in relation to how much money you got, and then what does that look like for the state, so that as people are crafting applications, I think that would be a good number to know. Thank you.
Great question, Annette. We have time for one more. Andrew's had his hand up for a while. I put in chat, but Luis, Nate, if you do have time, we have a few more questions in chat. I know your contact info has been shared to answer more, but unfortunately we just have time for one more.
She froze, so I'll go ahead and ask my
Andrew,
question.
go ahead.
Yeah, I put in the chat, but I have a couple of questions. I'm just looking at the size of, your development of 0.4 acres. I'm wondering, how many people are planning to be fed out of this community garden or community farm? What are the wages going to be for the workers there? I'm just trying to grasp sort of what the economic impact for workers and wages and true, equitable economic development out of this project is, just given the limited size and scope of the project.
So to begin, could I say has already been in operation at one site. So that 0.4 acres is that number of the site they're currently working. And so this new space at Walnut and Daisy will be increasing their capacity. They've been aching for new land to increase their efforts as well. So at this moment, it's hard to quantify exactly how much more food is going to be produced at the new site. The 0.4 acres, as was stated earlier, supports 50 plus families on a monthly basis. That site's got a lot of compost being processed, so that's becoming a source of revenue as well. And then in terms of wages, because they're a worker co-op, I know that they make all their decisions democratically about wages for all their workers, but all their wages are meant to be, what's the phrase, living wage. And so, and then where there's a short funding from the revenue of the farming efforts at the moment, there's grants that have, like USDA grants that have provided support where needed. And so in terms of the farm, that's where a lot of the economics stand.
Okay, great, thanks.
Hey, Luis, thank you for your time. I'm going to keep camera off because I think I'm glitching on you all. But thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of interest in how you all did this, your models, any information you can pass on to us would be really helpful to this group. So just appreciate your time today. I'm going to move us along to our second presentation. Yeah, thanks, guys. Our second presentation today, we have Gary with Coast Keepers and Melanie with the Banning Ranch Conservancy, two HRTC members leading a presentation on environmental and economic justice. So they want to talk about a little bit about what's happening and what's been successful in the county so far. And this is continuing along the lines I mentioned earlier and helping make this work a little more concrete. What is the state looking for? What are the types of projects that could be funded given the spaces that they're in, the values they hold, and kind of the boxes they tick. So with that, Gary and Melanie, I will turn it to you.
Thank you so much. We want to thank Jesse for the opportunity to present today. And this is going to be a co-presentation by both myself and Melanie Schlotterbeck. And Melanie and I would both like to thank Diana Pena, who's Coast Keepers Associate Director of Programs, for her support and help in putting this presentation together. So, okay. As demonstrated in last week's priority vote, our current systems have not caught up enough to make the environmental justice sector to appear to be viable for funding as its own category. We must challenge the narrative by meaningfully incorporating environmental sustainability, resilience, safety, health, and equity into each project to ensure that they meet the state's goals for SURF so that we present competitive projects that receive funding. Our presentation today is meant to inspire us to think creatively and spark conversations that intersect each of our priorities, as well as an invitation to reach out to us so that we can help each other find opportunities of collaboration. The environment is everywhere. Environmental issues are life issues. A resilient economy and an environment go hand in hand, just as a strong and healthy workforce and a safe and healthy community go hand in hand. Our quality of life is dependent on all of these things. We heard you were already incorporating the environment into your workplace at the last meeting, and that's great. Here are some examples. Orange County has many examples of activities and programs that are currently incorporating the environment.
Thanks, Gary. So times have changed. There are not only more people, but also a better understanding of the interconnectedness of our built and natural landscapes. So let me share with you the interconnectedness of the environment. The environment, as Gary said, is all around us. It impacts all 5 of our senses: what we see, what we hear, smell, taste, and touch. And all of this ties into the SURF goals. Our objective today with this presentation is to introduce you to the work, our work through the eyes of the environmentalists and environmental justice advocates, the ones who work on these topics every day. The natural world struggles to keep up with the demands we make of it, but its systems continue to operate. So here are a few photos of how our landscapes are impacted by human influence. Our beaches look different. Our homes border oil and gas extraction equipment, not only a hazard to our planet's health, but ours as well. Our waterways are clogged with trash and debris that come from our neighborhoods, forcing us to do trash cleanups and install capture devices. There are a lot of opportunities for collaboration, and we hope to shed some light on these and acknowledge the inclusive nature of the environmental category. We were all recently asked, as Gary noted, to complete the survey to select 5 industries for Catalyst funding. And based on the federal government's existing industry list, the work we do as nonprofits only fits into the other category. Or does it? The reality is the work of nonprofits and the environment can be incorporated meaningfully into each and every one of these industries. Environmental resilience is a core SURF priority, and it should be its own industry. But as Gary said, our systems haven't caught up with our priorities. Here is one example of environmental resilience locally, not captured in the survey list. Thrive. You just heard a wonderful presentation about Santa Ana's first community-driven project on public land, the Walnut and Daisy Microfarm, which will be an urban farming and event space incubating local worker-owned businesses and providing healthy food and activities in central Santa Ana. Thrive continues to engage and train residents to learn about the development process and take leading roles in the project. The Community Economic Resilience Fund has 2 core goals. First is to ensure inclusive planning to fund shovel-ready projects. The second is to maximize funding and reduce timelines for project implementation. Every project that gets funded through SURF should have an environmental alignment because of its tie to the carbon neutral goal. So let me provide some context. The nonprofit Friends of Harbors, Beaches, and Parks created the Green Vision Map in the late 1990s. It's a living document updated annually that shows lands that are protected and those that are in need of protection. This Orange County focused map has over 275 potential properties, totaling over 30,000 acres available for conservation. What's the tie to SURF? Well, Governor Newsom recently signed SB 337 into law, which mandates protecting 30% of California's lands and waters by 2030. It's called 30 by 30. Buying land reduces greenhouse gas emissions, improves the air quality and water quality, increases carbon storage, and improves our quality of life, among many other things. The remainder of the slides in this presentation outline environmental and environmental justice projects that could be funded through the SURF Catalyst funding. First, we'll start with implementing the Green Vision Map. Please know that the slides list examples of projects, but it's not an exhaustive list. So implementing the Green Vision Map could include conserving land from willing sellers or restoring degraded habitats. It could also be expanding marine protected areas off of our coast. Other conservation mechanisms include conservation easements, where the landowner still owns the land but permanently restricts its use. And finally, we've all heard about P22, the mountain lion that prompted the wildlife bridge to be built over Highway 101. But did you know that Orange County has its own wildlife corridor project? Two examples of shovel-ready projects that implement the Green Vision Map, and thanks, Diana, include completion of the West Coyote Hills acquisition by the City of Fullerton and Friends of Coyote Hills. Another example is the collaborative public-private effort led by Laguna Greenbelt to create a wildlife corridor between the 22,000 acres protected in Laguna Coast to the Santa Ana Mountains at the 5 freeway. Next, under Governor Newsom, more emphasis is being placed on tribal governments, land return, and tribal rights. These include employing additional These concepts include employing traditional ecological knowledge like cultural burning and nature-based solutions to improve habitat lands. It could also come in the form of better planning with tribal input, the incorporation of cultural access easements across indigenous homelands, or co-management of the land. Finally, sacred site protection of known burial grounds and other significant sites is important too. Two examples of shovel-ready projects that could help with indigenous collaboration include the protection of the Goodell property, which is about 12 acres near Bolsa Chica wetlands. This site has significant cultural value to the local tribal nations. Another project is the creation of a museum focused on indigenous history in Irvine. Let's show the world this local history instead of keeping it in a dark, musty room.
Thank you, Melanie. Science is an integral foundation for our advocacy. Best management practices in the workplace are critical to keep people and the environment safe. Low impact development in construction activities has proven to reduce pollutants in urban runoff, along with providing benefits like water-wise landscaping and habitats for wildlife. County stormwater permits manage how much pollution can be discharged into our waterways, harbors, and coastal waters. There are more and more scientific studies coming out showing numerous actions that can be taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A couple of projects ready for funding is the DROPS program. This program enhances school landscapes with rain gardens and diversions that reduce pollution, recharge drinking water supply, and engage students in hands-on science education. The Fairview Park provides habitat for endangered species, diverts runoff to ponds that filter pollutants and recharge groundwater. And this is a site for a student-led conservation research projects. Environmental issues are justice issues. I'll say that again. Environmental issues are justice issues. Community engagement is critical in understanding and addressing inequities and injustices that have detrimentally affected people's health and the ability to safely be a part of the workforce. Our transition to a carbon neutral economy must be a just transition for all, including our labor communities, children and youth, and all marginalized people. Accessible pathways with paid opportunities, childcare, nutrition, transportation, safe working environments, and housing are all needed to ensure an equitable and a just transition to a carbon neutral economy. Some examples of projects is Orange County Environmental Justice's soil-led biomediation project. That is a partnership between Youth Cultivating Changes and UCI Public Health. Community members took soil samples and determined hotspots for lead in their community. They then developed remediation programs using California native plants. They produced 2 educational videos that have won awards from the EPA. On water is life, and water is what elevates our county to give us the quality of life we enjoy here in Orange County. Everything from our world-renowned beaches to our precious and dependable groundwater supply to our neighborhood waterways. They provide economic value in the form of recreation, tourism, and resources. Ocean-dependent tourism and recreation generates more than $2 billion to Orange County. Our water quality has improved over the past 2 decades. However, there's much more work to do. The National Clean Water Act was adopted in 1972. The goal was to achieve clean water across the nation by 1984. Today in California, 94% of our waterways are polluted with at least one pollutant, and most waterways contain multiple pollutants. So there's a lot more to do. Some projects is the Pacific Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach, which rescues, rehabilitates, and releases marine mammals along with conducting research, is currently undergoing renovations that include on-site water recycling and treatment, as they currently are the #1 water user in Laguna Beach. These ponds for sea animals get changed every day, and the water is not recycled. So it's one-time use. To further, and so it's something that they really need to do, and they're trying to raise money for it. To further exemplify how these issues are interconnected, more animals end up at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center because of illness caused by harmful algal blooms in our ocean. And this is caused by pollution in urban runoff, which increases demand for water at their pools. And so it's a circle. We must ensure that we are implementing conservation projects wherever possible. Our Purple Pipe recycled water program started at IRWD and is well established in many areas of the country.
Thanks, Gary. There are a lot of planning projects that will help improve management and stewardship goals as well. This helps build climate resilience, create new jobs and mentorship opportunities in science and other technical fields, and improve access for communities needing park space and nature. 2 examples include the recently protected Randall Preserve. You could advance the slide. So the Randall Preserve, which is formerly Banning Ranch, which is undergoing numerous planning efforts, including a resource management plan and coastal resilience plan, among others. This land is immediately adjacent to 2 disinvested communities. Cities are also working towards reducing carbon outputs with the creation of climate action plans, like the one Santa Ana is creating. These can include things like energy audits, solar investments, and better policy. Urban greening is yet another opportunity to invest catalyst funds. It incorporates improved design in previously disinvested locations, and it can come in many forms, like planting trees, to adding water fountains at parks and transit stops to help mitigate the effects of high heat days. Newer to the mix is the concept of community gardens that promote the farm-to-table concept, reducing the reliance on big farms and transportation to get produce to the area. 2 sample projects include the City of Santa Ana's Urban Greening Project, which incorporates community amenities, streetlights, playgrounds, and trees. It improves the health, safety, and lives of local residents. Second is the potential to adopt a countywide native tree preservation policy by the Board of Supervisors. This policy sets standards on how native trees are removed and replaced. It recognizes the intrinsic biological and ecological benefits of trees. My last example includes infrastructure projects. This can include installing electric vehicle charging stations to help meet the state's goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. Other examples are adding cool roofs or cool streets to combat local heat islands, mixed use zoning so that people are near services, and making surfaces pervious to help groundwater recharge and reduce urban runoff. The first example is the city of Brea's lane reduction of Birch Street near the Brea Mall, which creates a safer pedestrian-oriented corridor to get people to the Brea downtown, which is where they spend money, so it boosts the economy. Finally, one of Orange County's largest park assets includes the Tri-County Chino Hills State Park. About a decade ago, rains and poor drainage permanently closed one of the favored east-west trails enjoyed by visitors. Funding could be allocated to make the final repairs and reopen this trail.
Thank you, Melanie. Our recent outreach and engagement surveys findings show that education, training, and skills development as a top solution to ensure there are accessible, high-quality jobs for most economically disadvantaged individuals and families. Studies have shown that hands-on learning opportunities in science, technology, engineering, the environment, arts, and math, paired with stewardship and the solution-based approach, creates bridges for community members to access these job sectors. These opportunities can come in the form of partnerships with schools, volunteer engagement days with churches, companies, and other groups, community monitoring for air, water, soil, and more. There is a large demand in our communities for these opportunities. Projects examples include Coast Keepers and the Institute for Conservation Research and Education student-led research projects, where students visit various sensitive habitats throughout the county regularly during the school year to conduct research that could inform future habitat restoration decision-making. There's also a need for additional community monitoring of the health and status of our environment, such as Sea and Sage Audubon's Christmas bird count. In conclusion, there's a great opportunity and a need for us to collaborate and to work against the silos created by outdated systems. This is our opportunity to come together and work to ensure that everyone has access to the amazing quality of life we can enjoy and secure in Orange County and for future generations. The photo here is a project Coast Keeper does every year. It's the annual Kids Ocean Day. And they come to the beach after we've put on assemblies in their schools. And in 2017, when we brought 1,300 school students to Huntington Beach State Park, and they urged us to work together.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Melanie, for your time and presentation. We do have time, folks, for 2 quick questions for Melanie and Gary. So if you can use that reaction button to raise your hand, we can get your questions in right now. Any takers? Yes. Orange County Conservancy, go for it. And you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted, sorry.
Go.
Good morning, Melanie, I'm Catherine Muñiz, and I know that the Conservation Corps has worked with the Banning Ranch Conservancy. We do have nature-based solutions funding, and I would love the opportunity to talk to you about some project work.
Absolutely. I'll drop my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Great.
Look at the connections in the HRTC. We love to see it. Anyone else? Questions for Gary and Melanie? It was a lot of information on the work they've done, projects that are ready, the importance of this work, etc. I see Melanie, thank you for dropping your contact information in chat. And Kathy, I see your hand raised. We'll go to you before moving on to our next item.
I just wanted to add one more opportunity, and I'm going to be in contact with Melanie after this, but we are trying to revive the OC STEM ecosystem work that's been happening over the past 7 years in Orange County through all the education systems in the K-12 arena. And all the things you said in this presentation were amazing. You've just given us like the entire menu of what we can get our different schools involved with in the elementary, middle, and high school space. So just thank you so much for your presentation, and we'll be in touch.
Kathy, for your comments. I'm going to turn it to Jesse now to walk us through the Catalyst proposal update before a few reminders and our adjournment. So Jesse, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, thank you. I believe people can see that. We go to presentation mode. It will let me. So just again, a budget breakdown of kind of Catalyst, and I think this is an opportunity. And Emily, if you could drop also the survey link in the chat. It's been shared with all of you prior, but since I have your attention, I want to make sure that a big part of this is ensuring that we have kind of feedback or input in how we kind of write the narrative. So again, there's $9 million for pre-development projects. I think the state is the state knows that we don't know what these projects are. And so again, it's going to be, I guess, very minimally written as to, we just are going to say like, we want $9 million to do this work. So like I want to just start there. It's not as if, again, we have to have the projects even submitted to us, let alone selected. That is part of the work. But we will say we absolutely need $9 million because I can guarantee you we will have projects that will expend $9 million. And then the other one that I would say is TBD, and there's another slide, is the industry sector coordinators. Again, the state recognizes there is almost no way, or there is no way, and I would be shocked if any region knows who these industry sector coordinators are, or would have selected the industry sector coordinator. So I will talk again about that role once more, but I just want to make clear that kind of when we submit this proposal, just know like the state is very well aware that $9 million, there's not really supposed to be a plan on what that will be spent on, nor will the $1.5 million. But I think what we do know, obviously, as regional conveners, as best as we can budget, is kind of how OCBC thinks it's best to spend the $2 million to sustain this per the requirements. And then I don't have something for the fiscal agent, but the fiscal agent gets $1.5 million in order to make sure there's adequate staffing to do the compliance part of this. So for the $2 million that are designated to the regional convener, in conversations with my CFO and CEO, for the sake of transparency, OCBC will hire a full-time manager to have myself in a much more reduced role. I love all of you, but I think this work, now that it's sustained, requires a full project manager. We will have that to still have Dr. Walrod be in support of all this work, because he's done a lot of economic development plans and planning, to have that institutional knowledge, to have our communications on staff. I have a support person to do the calendar invites, the notes, and all the staffing, as well as rent and other operating expenses. That for the 2 years, OCBC will designate $1.25 million. This will, at the end of the day, also, I would say, gives us the funds to where, if we need to be flexible and deploy funds into things that are that this group deems important, then we will go ahead and obviously use our funds to do that. The rest of the $2 million, we think it's important to spend on compensating the collaborative. A lot of you couldn't be present in this work if it wasn't for the compensation you were already designated. We want to extend that. And so that's what that budget allocation is to keep you on the HRTC as much as you are willing to. $100,000, we're supposed to sustain research. We think $100,000 is fair, primarily because I think our research is pretty exhaustive. However, there can be grants that as a group we may want to pursue that might be requesting specific things. And then we have to, if it's not already in the regional plan, they will have to do some research in order to get that data set in order for us to apply for grant funding. $180,000 for outreach and engagement. We've done a robust amount of outreach and engagement. But I think the main purpose here is to ensure that we are hearing from community when we start surfacing catalyst and implementation projects. So much like we did in the last meeting with the last presentation, right, or even previous ones, we asked the community what should be the industries of focus. You guys, all of you then utilize that as something to look at when you selected the industries that we will focus on. And then the other outreach had to do with questions around strategies, which we will address in a later meeting. But the point was, we heard from the community what they believe the top strategies are for greater economic equity, greater environmental equity, greater public health equity. So the whole point is that you have to hear directly from residents before you as a body make decisions. You guys have your experiences, and I think we have a diverse group, but we can't be presumptive in what these projects are. Another thing is also based on location. And we will disaggregate that a little bit more. It wasn't the last presentation, but if there's a greater need from the residents of North Orange County, and we think about projects of value, well, maybe that project shouldn't be in South County, even though that would be in a disinvested community in South County. So these are the things that we have to continue to work on through outreach and engagement. Other software, we have to utilize Zoom and all the different, and the licensing there. MZ helps with a little bit with the research on the labor market side. And then what I would call miscellaneous, we have to have interpretation services. As you know, we try to translate everything. All notes are done in Spanish and Vietnamese. We've translated the full report in Spanish. Residents, because we are doing this via Zoom and not in person, that people will need, internet access. So we are, paying for certain residents who need them, their hotspots, in order to be able to join virtually. And then, facilitation, because we should have a third party. California Force is doing a wonderful job. We should have a third party move us, so there's, again, impartiality. So that is, again, for the sake of transparency, for the 2 million, this is how we currently budget it. We have, flexibility. I would say the state is very flexible with all these things between now and May. And then they will have flexibility while we do it. But this is kind of a first draft. I want to say it's not a first draft, but I would say this is how we envision kind of the money should be allocated for now, as best as we can predict, because it's going to be hard to truly predict what's going to be needed from May through September. So that's the breakdown there. And then I'm going to just go through this. I'll stop, pause for questions, and then we'll go into the second portion. As I mentioned, again, there's industry sector coordinators. We did pick 5 sectors. So that means it probably is justified that we have, 5 organizations or individuals doing this work. And again, a total of 1.5 million for them to do the following. Ways to think about this, of course, is, there are people who might know specific industries. Those people could be valuable partners or potential industry sector coordinators. Or you could look at it as, are there people who are real experts in some of these specific skill sets? And so you could, to say that someone is gonna, let's say healthcare and social assistance, because that was one of the industries selected. Healthcare and social assistance, can that person help catalog projects, know where, most of the state, federal, private grants are? Do they have relationships to liaison with the ecosystem, and they can provide procurement assistance? Sometimes that might be difficult for one person or organization to be able to do. So another way to think about this, I think, is, if people, because we will have, an RFQ kind of RFP process with this as well, and we'll develop that in preparation of May. However, so I would just start thinking now, if people who are very good at some of these things, that we could also try to hire people, and then I would say kind of layer their skill sets together in order to kind of meet all these objectives. So that work, we don't know the dollar amount per person. We'll have to obviously wait for the kind of the RFQ or the submissions for the RFQ, but just know that this work will be contracted work. It will not be in-house at OCBC. It will not be in-house at Charitable Ventures. So, if people, let them know now, maybe in preparation for that. And so before I move on, I will stop, because again, this can kind of be answered via the survey, but I want to make sure that we are answering questions first. Yes, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. And I really have appreciated the entire process that you have kept us informed with, ability to have input, etc. As I was looking at the slides, one of the pieces that I felt that we would advantage ourselves and get closer to our alignment with disadvantaged communities is to make sure that we're including intentionally and specifically language about skill sets and activities that are helping community members where they are today to go forward. So for instance, on the job description, We kind of have a traditional economic development description of what those facilitators might be doing. And in my mind, I was thinking we would want to say things like workforce training connections, ensuring that we're assisting, the highest environmental standards, just transition. I think the presentation earlier where we were talking about community ownership. And so, while I think those things could be read as included in the list that you have, we don't necessarily see those words. And I think that would really add.
Absolutely. Thank you. We will make in the proposal narrative and in the budget summary, we will make that clear, Tony. We will add that language. Any other questions or comments? So with this, the state, and so we move on again, this is also in the survey link as well. The big thing, knowing that, I think there's a lot of undecided, because a lot of it will have to be made kind of collectively as a body. Just there are 5 fundamental narrative questions that they want us to answer. And so I just have this top line is, again, since I have your attention, I'll take it verbally, is kind of one of, I guess the top one is one of each. It is a question from the narrative. Sorry, I'm kind of get confusing, but as we move on, each kind of bold at the top is what the state has requested that we answer. I just put some high level bullet points here. I welcome people's feedback and input on how they want to answer these questions. I will note, that these answers are not supposed to be more than 500 words. So the state is asking that we are precise. It does not need to be, incredibly long form. But I would just say, again, I highlighted, I think, how we think we want to answer this question in big buckets or pillars. But I welcome if there's any feedback on any kind of missing bullet points as you see per question. And so I will give it a couple minutes. There's 5 of them. So if there aren't, I will move on to each section. But again, we have until the end of the month. Your feedback sooner would be appreciated. It could also be dropped in that survey. I know about 8 of you or 9 of you have already completed that, and I'm weaving in your content into the narrative as well. However, there's, this group is almost 70 and I only got 9 responses. So while I have your attention, I would love, again, the feedback and input.
Hey, Jesse, this is Josefa with Cielo.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the place for the question. Maybe it was when you previously opened the floor. But as we think about many of the organizations that are rooted in these disinvested communities, oftentimes the data infrastructure is not strong. And I assume that with Catalyst programming, that data collection, data management, data reporting is going to be critical. So maybe I missed that on the slide, but where does that sort of infrastructure around data systems lie within this work, particularly as we think about, again, those organizations that are really deeply seated in these neighborhoods that likely don't have that infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, that would ultimately be housed in partnership, with OCBC to try to do that work, of course, in consultation with many members of the HRTC who live that every day, as well as, we do have a partnership with Esri with some of that mapping and kind of hosting that data hub. So that would be I would say the 2 primary partners to execute that work. And, Dr. Walrod as well would be instrumental in making sure that that is a useful tool and housed. Does that answer your question, Josefa?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so do we know what type of reporting is required for the Catalyst program? I guess that's another way of asking the question.
Oh, well, from a compliance standpoint, that's where I'd have to defer to the fiscal agent. But as far as what's required for the actual activities themselves, that has not been, 100% clear.
Got it.
Okay. I would say from a basic compliance standpoint, yes, but right. I think if you want to talk about monitoring success and
exactly, and
stuff
impact,
like that, no, that has not been made explicitly clear by the state.
Okay.
Although I'm sure, again, like everything, we can always have our own criteria so long as it doesn't contradict the state. So that is something we can definitely develop, before we start selecting projects.
Thanks, Jesse.
Wow, great question. Yes, Catherine.
Jesse, can you may have already gone over this, the bullet that says contract with 5 sector investment coordinators. Could you potentially go over that, what those are?
Yeah, so we did pick our 5 sectors. So their job is to, whether within this, again, depending on how we assemble this team, they are, going out to the community. They're supposed to be our technical eyes and ears on projects within those specific sectors, and the feasibility of some of the things being requested, of course, the dollar amount, doing the due diligence. So this HRTC is making as best they can apples to apples decisions on yes to this activity, and then of course potentially no to others, right? Like these are the awardees based on this to do the pre-development activities. It's in the SFP. It's quite a long list of things, but it's kind of the things that, like, Luis mentioned. Are there feasibility studies, environmental impact reports? So these are the things that they're going to have to try to solicit from all these different stakeholders to see if they have projects that could fit this pre-development. The pre-development definition. Of course, they should, as the second bullet point, they need to constantly be looking at funding. One is, even if we choose to fund with Catalyst, setting that project up to receive implementation dollars in another way. Or, to be honest, like if projects don't get selected by this group, could they be eligible for other sources of funding? So they're just not left hanging. It's not no, good luck. But, can we find funding for the ones that we say no to? And this is probably part of their work. And I would say OCBC is going to be working as well in this space. Liaison with the ecosystem, right? That helps if you kind of know the players to be able to make sure that you're soliciting or making sure that even that the funds are available, because you just don't want an open grant where no one's going to even submit proposals. And to be honest, like the provider procure technical assistance is, I think it's just language the state put in. I don't think that if they can do that, that's great. I don't think that's an expectation. I think it was just something that, again, it's just kind of state language in order to see if it's possible. That would be helpful as well.
Okay.
So if you have specific questions, again, this is, and again, we will obviously have probably a more exhaustive list when we request for qualifications, but this is specifically from the SFP, high level, what the expectation is of the people doing these roles.
Okay.
And the 1.5 million, Jesse, would be evenly divided among the 5 industry sector coordinators?
Well, that's why because this money's not coming till May, we have time to decide that. That does not necessarily need to be the case.
Okay. Jesse, and those 5 sectors again, could you just repeat them?
Yeah, healthcare and social assistance, education services, manufacturing, accommodation and food services, and Dr. Do you remember the 5th one? And construction. Sorry, construction was the 5th one.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get off mute in time.
Yes, construction was the 5th one. So I will again resend. I said in the email on Tuesday. I will resend the list. And as you will see in the shared folder, the full results are there to show you. I mean, those were the top 5, but to give you a sense of how many votes they actually got and whatnot. That's
okay.
Also in that shared folder with you. But those are the 5 industries.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, then back to this, and Annalisa, I'm happy to stay on if anyone else wants to stay on and review this. You have this deck. Again, you could provide the input via the survey, but Annalisa, I probably recommend if you want to adjourn the meeting, but again, we'll keep it recorded. I will stay on if people want to provide input verbally to these sections. But if people want to use the survey model, then I think we should give them the right to jump off as well. So Annalisa, I'd recommend, can we adjourn this meeting, and then I will stay on, keep this recorded, and answer any other questions as we go through this slide deck.
Of course, sounds good, Jesse. As you saw, Emily dropped the survey link back in chat for your use. I'll close this out with just a few reminders for folks. There's 3 documents in the appendix of your agenda packet. So you'll see an executive summary there of all of the pilot projects that were awarded in May. You heard from Luis and Nate today, which is the one awarded in Santa Ana. The other 7 are there. So if you want to take a look at the type of projects, what the state is looking for, That is there for your reference. You also see the state criteria on how this collaborative should start thinking about the differences between a ready to go project that we've been talking about, ready for implementation, and other sources of funding beyond the Jobs for Surf space versus what a last mile project is and an exploratory project. I think that's all for this. Stay on if you want to chat with Jesse specifically on this slide. The next meeting is going to be December 8th. So we'll see everyone after the Thanksgiving holiday. To those who serve and have served, happy Veterans Day to you and yours. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting and turn it to Jesse for any additional questions that people have if they want to utilize that in their last 4 minutes today. Thank you all.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay on past 10 for whomever also has that availability.
Jesse,
Yeah.
this is Linda. I have one of the questions I have in seeing the 5 industries that were selected. I'm curious, how are we going to make certain that the emphasis on those 5 industries are integrated with the 21st century and 22nd century industries that are their current cornerstone of Orange County's economy now? I mean, healthcare clearly fits in there, but how can we make sure that there is an integration and that it doesn't appear to be that there's just these one-off sort of projects that are popping up, but rather finding ways that we are creating true alignment and synergy with existing industries that are providing the bulk of the jobs in the area, and for which our educational institutions, are supporting.
Yeah, I mean, I would I guess, I don't know if we can't guarantee that's going to be done with all industries, to be candid. I think that was, this was the decision of the group. And of course, everyone has different perspectives, right? When, how the perspective you took, Linda, in selecting the top 5 very strategically was a different perspective of what others might be thinking. So maybe I would say they weren't thinking in those terms when they selected these. They must have had other rationales. So
right.
I would say we're going to do it as best we can. You said some have natural fits. But others, again, I think you can continue to elevate that as something for your colleagues to consider. But there's no way that we can, and then with like something like the K through 16 collaborative, for the ones that overlap, that makes sense. And we can continue to have that synergy there. For the ones that don't, I think they may be standalone in how we support that industry, or think about ways of what this industry looks like moving forward in the 21st, 22nd century.
Okay.
Not the best answer, but I would say like we still, one thing is I'm glad you surfaced this here, is that again, we're like, this money won't be coming in till May. And because I think we're ahead in so many other aspects of this grant, that there are, I think, a lot of things that we can continue to use this opportunity to just discuss more instead of having presentations, but discussions around ways to think about this. And Luis, I'm not sure if you're on, kind of the same answer. Like we will, as either if the group wants a subcommittee on this, or whether the whole group, a process to at least like notify people and select. So I'm not sure if you're on, Luis. I'll email you after, but that's another thing. We just want in the short amount of time to just secure the money. And then I think we have several months to secure the process and how some of this will get doled out.
I also think you're going to find in the in both the stakeholder map stuff, which I haven't looked at that closely, and the SWOT analysis, that there may be other strategies or groups that are either have these industries or have identified other industries, because it's not necessarily that this task is the highest and best industries for the region. It's the 5 industries that the group feels when you talk about centering on disinvested communities that you want to begin to address. So we also need to be sure the narrative around it isn't suggesting that this is just a new list of best industries for Orange County, but that this is a list of kind of narrowing priorities for a particular kind of work, and the stakeholder map is identifying this kind of larger list. So it's not like isolation. We recognize the 21st century industry work, and then this activity is about something else. That's how I was envisioning it.
Yeah, I think always incredibly well said, Tony. It could very much be an and thing as well, right? There are some industries where it fits that better, and then there's others where I think we want to make more resilient, shore up, make more equitable, and that work is important too, and not just kind of leave them in like the dustbin of economic history. Any others?
And I was just going to add to that this is a dean foreman at the Hospitality Training Academy. That the state does have things like high road training partnerships and high road construction careers in the labor agency, and those are good ways to look at projects that have climate resiliency and career pathways and things like that build a better Orange County. Thanks, Jesse.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Then again, just moving into, again, you can just kind of read these. If there are no comments, we can continue to move forward. But this is just the narrative questions the state has requested that we address.
Hey, Jesse, I wanted to ask a question.
Sure. Sarah?
I'm not sure if you went over it, but is there a certain amount of last mile ready to go and exploratory projects that like 2 of each? Is it just kind of what hits the mark? Is that divided in any way?
Yeah, great question. So far, the answer is no. I think the state is still mulling it over. They have been set, but they did say they very much still want to see exploratory projects. Whether they're going to put a hard number on it or whether they kind of leave it to the region, that this is not about, and I don't know what the dollar amounts are. I'm just going to it's not about doing 20 last mile projects, getting 9 million out the door as quickly as possible. It is, and this is even their language, like back of the envelope type of just ideas, and really digging into the feasibility and moving them forward. They do want to see that. So no hard number, but there needs to be some of one category and definitely some of the other.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, great question. Any others? Then I'll move to the next one. If people have any feedback or comments, you could put them in the chat, say it verbally. This is recorded, but I'll take notes on things you believe are important to be added to this narrative.
And I was going to mention one more thing.
Sure.
And just in regards to disinvested communities, I know that there are a lot of ethnicities that fall under the other. Mm-hmm. So just my concern would be that anything that is passed just wouldn't be only for one community, that it would kind of be inclusive of anyone under that kind of bracket.
Absolutely. And so from a kind of ethnicity or heritage standpoint, and sorry, Tony, if I'm even using those words incorrectly, pretty much those of kind of indigenous or Native American descent is the only one explicitly mentioned. Everything else is based on income. Okay. We know that, right? Like there's troublesome overlaps between your ethnicity or race and your income level, but it doesn't say, right, only for one specific ethnic community. It's based on income level and essentially like the what's called the median household income of where you live. And so that's what, so long as you're like in that census tract, you are, part of that disinvested community. But even more so, of course, if we know your income level is at or below the line the state has set for Orange County.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it should be, it should be kind of, color blind in some sense when it comes to, which disinvested communities. Great question though. Any others on this? So just question of the governance structure. So, and by current governance structure, it's pretty much, if you are a member of the collaborative, it's one person, one vote, right? That's the primary thing. There's a process. We first do motion in a second. The majority of votes cast is how we proceed with things. But again, if there's anything else on this topic people want to include.
Nope.
I kind of already touched upon this. We partnered with a lot of community groups, right? We didn't do outreach engagement through a PR team and stuff like that. It was, we contacted groups who are working in the community day in, day out in their respective fields. Some were environmentally based, some work with small businesses, some work in either by geography or other distinctions. And so it's going to be, I think, a continuation of that. And as we did, like, I know I'm repeating myself, but as we did when it came to industries and as we have done with strategies, a continuation of, now that we have a good sense of projects because they've been proposed, right? They kind of went through the whatever portal we create or whatnot, hearing from the community, here are the projects being considered, what is your priority? And using that as an important data set for this group, this collaborative, to make decisions. And then again, I mean, I think that's why we want to fund people to stay on board here, because I think it's really the composition of this group really centers a diverse set of disinvested communities. And of course, the residents themselves who have that direct life experience. I think that will make sure that this is all anchored to the benefit of our region's disinvested communities. Any other comments on this one? Okay. I believe this is the last one, or maybe that was it. Okay, here, sorry, this is the last one. So how do we ensure that these funds get to disinvested communities in procurement? Because of course, if you don't write a proposal, you're not going to get funded, or you don't even have the possibility of being funded, and of course, the selection. So we have, I think I want to hide the third, but we have the maps that tell us exactly where these census tracts are. So of course there has to be some either physical location or some connection to the residents of those census tracts. It's not like we're guessing to where these disinvested communities are. We know exactly where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very similar to the previous one, right? Like this group is anchored with organizations or individuals who naturally support these communities. So since you have voting power, you want it to be, it will be naturally kind of pulled towards disinvested communities. And that is anything on this last topic. With that, I will stop share. Any questions just in total about anything that's happened today? Because if not, then I will end the call and everyone can have, if you have a 3-day weekend, have a wonderful 3-day weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, everybody. Adios.
Thank you.